the Inspirational Women in Literature and Conference. My name is Winona. I'm one of the And I Thought ladies, and
I'm Jade, and I'm one of your co-hosts for today.
we also are going to have Dr. Ayolanda Argent stopping in to say hello and do a few interviews as well with our wonderful speakers. Um, this conference, actually, the proceeds from the tickets went to benefit three nonprofits: IVA's literacy nonprofit, Powerful Beginnings to help women who have suffered trauma get through new lives, and Scarlet Our Black's program as well. And our sponsors for this event were Mariner's Concierge. And since we volunteered our own time, we might as well say the Woman's Cave.
Yeah, and the women.
as well as Oberlin Publishing. So we want to thank you guys so much for being able to make it here today. And I hope you stick with us for the rest of the day to enjoy the wonderful speakers. I think we're going to go ahead and let our first speaker start by introducing herself. She wrote and reads a book, and my phone is across the room, so I'm going to have a hard time reading that intro. Give me 1 second and I'll get your intro.
Okay.
Is the author of the middle reader book, You're Too Much, Reggie Brown, and an ebook entitled Where Present Meets Past, a forthcoming adult novel called The Brownstone, several short stories, and a couple of unproduced screenplays. Her most recent work, My Name is Kendra, is a young adult novel released December 2016, and Kamichi currently resides in Northern Virginia with family. Kamichi, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Lovely. If you don't mind, would you like to take it away and let our people in our audience know about you and your inspirational journey?
Thank you so much, lady. So 2 things kept coming up for me as I was preparing for this conference, trying to figure out what I'm going to say. And it came down to this, how life experiences, and this applies to every writer out there, every aspiring writer out there, how those experiences contribute to our writing, and how sometimes, in spite of our best efforts, it takes time for our dreams to come to fruition. That's just how it is. So my own personal journey, and I kind of am realizing as I go along through this journey that my journey began when I was a little girl at a very young age, because I grew up across the street from a little public library and really literally could cross the street. It was the one street that my parents allowed me to cross. And so I would go there. I had a weekly reading habit where I would go, pick up armful of books, check them out, bring them home, read them, return 2 or 3 days later, pick up another armful of books. And this was my habit for so many years. My parents claimed that I read every single book in the place, and I think I did. Definitely the children's department, probably later on the YA section, and then some of the adult content. But it was funny because when we were children, I come from a family of 3 kids. My habit was such that when I needed to be disciplined, my parents would take away my library card. That was what did it for me. I got the point of whatever discipline that they were meting out to me. So I really realize now that my love of words and my love of the art of storytelling began when I was a child. So I think I need to go back there to really say that this was the beginning of my journey. It took me through some very tough times in my life. I'm very open in speaking about my battle with depression since I was a child. And I know that the escapism of being able to read a book, at that time there was no writing involved, but just me being able to read books, it took me away from the things that, whatever was making me depressed at that young age. It was kind of unknown at that time. But this was my way of battling this. I didn't attempt to write because I didn't even know that I had the ability to write then. I just knew that I loved word power. I had a passion for words and what they could do. So that was a really big thing for me. So later on in my teens, I finally figured out, well, you know what? I think I can craft a story. Let me try something. I'm going to try my hand at something. So I wrote my first book, which I still have in handwriting form, called And Then There's Bunk 5, And then there was a sequel to that called the Chit Chat Club, which I still have too in my, 15, 16-year-old scratch. I still have the notebooks of those stories. Those are the beginning of my writings. And then fast forward a few years later, I was able to continue to create characters that I love, worlds that were perfect on paper. Everything that made me happy, I was able to put into these stories. That was the beginning of it for me. And I think that began my writing journey. But then fast forward a few years later, and I finally got the courage to go ahead and write my first book, which was, it had all the elements that I love. A big family. I don't come from a big family, but it had a big family. There was lots of love. They were fiercely loyal to each other. And that particular book was made up of 6 different stories. And if you read the book, you notice at the end of each story, there's always a teachable moment. There's always a lesson learned. Everything's perfect at the end of the stories. And that's what I needed at that time. And, that's what made me happy. But I think as with any writer, as you go on and you're nurturing your talent, real life eventually creeps into your work. And any negative things that are going on in your world creeps into your work. Anything that you're dealing with, it shapes your stories, it shapes your characters. And that was what was beginning to happen with me, so that by the time I did actually write "Hey, My Name is Kendra," all of that started to come into my work, and all the depression that I had been running from and all the different things that I was dealing with now started to shape my characters and their dialogue and interactions with one another. And that's what was happening with my work, as it probably has happened to any writer that's out there now. If you're a tortured soul, it's there in your work. It's hard to ignore it. And I think, it's not a bad thing necessarily. That's what I do think, because it helps to define your characters. So Kendra is a story. Hey, My Name is Kendra is a young adult novel. It has been classified as a realistic YA fiction. And it's a story of a 15-year-old African-American girl. She just happens to be African-American, but her story is one that is an international one. She's dealing with depression. It's untreated because her family doesn't understand it. They don't get her the help that she needs. And so she's suffering in silence. There's some other family dynamics going on. There was an older sister who had disappeared 10 years prior, who suddenly returns. And then there's an uncle that steps into the picture, and very quickly you learn that he has sketchy intentions. And so you've got this mix of drama building, and her still trying to hang on by a thread to what she feels is her sanity going away. And it's her story. And it's a story of hope, ultimately, but it does detail her struggles. So I've been asked recently what kind of inspired me to write "Hey, My Name is Kendra," and I haven't been really able to pinpoint that moment where I said, okay, now's the time to write this book. I just knew it was the time to write that book. And it was just time. My character was speaking out to me. I was already well past, but I was still far from knowing how to fully manage my depression. Even in my adulthood, I just knew that this was the time that Kendra's story needed to be told. And so I got to that right away. There were recurring nightmares that I was suffering. There were half-recovered memories that I was that were kind of coming back to me of what had happened maybe to me as a teen, and they were taking over my life as an adult. And so it seemed to me that if I was really ever going to get over or work through my life experiences, I need to at least explore what was going on. And I chose to do that through my characters. And I would venture to say that there are probably many writers out there who begin writing that same. Now the only way for them to work through it is to have their characters voice the words that they want to say and have these situations work out the way the writer had hoped that they would work out in real life, but a lot of good stories, I think, begin that way. And that's what happened with Kendra. So it seemed appropriate that I write her story in the voice of a 15-year-old. I don't know why, but I feel it's kind of telling that I was able to do this so easily in her voice, because I'm thinking that's where I feel like I almost got stuck, I think, in my own life. So here she is at 15 years old, and I'm writing her voice. It felt like she was just telling me her story, and I'm just listening to her story and telling it the way she wanted it to be told. Again, I think that goes back to what some writers do. They share personal nuggets of truth with their readers, personal struggles, and it can be therapeutic, it can be cathartic, and it just helps you build a really authentic story. And that's what was happening when I was writing this particular character. And I'm talking a lot about her because I feel that Kendra, this book, is, no matter what I've written before, no matter what I write going forward, I feel this is such an important book because it's a turning point in my life. And I'll tell you a little later about how it's affecting others right now, even though it's only slowly making headway. It's really helping folks. So I have a special relationship with this book, as you'll see, because I'll talk about it. I'm also saying this because in your own writing, you might be struggling with the development of a character or a story. You're not quite sure what to do, what to say, how to tell their story. And you might consider this. It might be that you're fighting against a story that's supposed to be told, or you're fighting with the character that is trying to tell that story. You're not aligning with what they want you to say, and maybe that's where you're both at an impasse and you're not able to go forward in your work. To spend some time with your character, sit with them, and take a moment to get to know them, hear what they're saying, and then tell their story the way they want to. And maybe this will get you past that impasse. So I did that with Kendra, and I started that by writing very visually as I saw her story unfolding in my mind's eye. And I did something with it that I don't usually do. I don't like to enter my work into competitions, but in this particular instance, I did. I entered it in the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award competition, and in the YA category, up against thousands of other writers. I felt really good about my work, but what writer really doesn't? So you feel, my work's going to do well. And it actually did. It continued to go weeks and weeks through the competition until the point where I finally got to the top 50 in my genre and was able to get a really good review from Publishers Weekly that helped kind of validate my work for me. And I felt like I was making some forward movement in my work. But it still comes back to timing. And that's something we spoke about in the beginning. I tried after getting that. Once my journey was over, I was a semifinalist. I did not make it to the final. So I figured, let me try and get the attention of some agents, some editors, some publishers, see if I can get a little interest in my book. And I tried that, and nothing happened. The time wasn't right. So I put the book away. I did nothing with it for years. Every now and then I would take it out, put it back, take it out. Wasn't making any headway. Time wasn't right. But this past year, in September 2016, I'm looking ahead to what's going to be winter 2016-17, knowing that this is a very difficult time in my life. As for many people who suffer from depression, the winter months, the darker months are the hardest. I knew I needed a project to keep me busy, keep me productive, keep me focused on something, anything other than the depression that I knew I was going to be facing. And I need something that I could control, because I can't always control depression, but I can control certain things. And this project was it. I knew I could control it. I knew it would empower me if I could see it through. Finally, it was Kendra's time. I just felt it, that it was time for Kendra to speak, to be out there. So this is a side note. Think about that for you as a writer. Maybe this story that you have floating around in your mind, for years or months and you've been saying, you know what, one day I'm going to write that story. One day. Well, maybe now is the time. Maybe now it's time to pull it out, flesh it out for whatever reason, whether it's because you need something to control in your life or it just feels right. Go with that gut feeling and just do it. Maybe it's your time. So for Kendra, December 2016 was her time. The book was already written. That part had been done. I did go through it a couple of times and tighten it up a little bit, tweak it a little bit, but I felt really good about this character and about her story. And I knew now the biggest thing was going to be, how do I get this book out here? Obviously, I wanted control over it. I want this out quickly. The only way that I'm going to make that happen is to self-publish. And so I decided I would go with CreateSpace because I really like the product. It's an Amazon product. And I like the fact that there were so many pieces that I control of this. It was a few $100s. And I want to backtrack and say, too, that how honorable self-publishing is. I think it needs to be said that just because you don't get a traditional book deal does not mean that there are a lot of best-selling authors right now who began their journey as self-publishers. But even if that's not the case, self-publishing is a viable option. It allows you to get your work out there in a very positive way, in a quick way, the way you want it to get out there. And it's a good way to see your project through. So don't be discouraged if you don't get the traditional deal. A lot of the deals are being given to those who have bigger names or celebrities and such. So consider that your word power can come through self-publishing. So in this situation, I knew that I didn't have the money to self-publish. That was the one thing holding me back. Even though I felt that it was time for Kendra, that was what was going to be holding me back was the money issue. So I decided to crowdfund through GoFundMe. This is the third time I attempted to do this. It had never worked before. But this time, the donations came in quickly and easily. The word spread, and suddenly I had the money within weeks, a couple of weeks, that I needed to have to publish because it was time. So I say all that to say timing really is everything. This time I was ready. This time the money that I needed was coming in. This time everything was falling into place and aligning, and it just seemed it was her time. So timing is everything. That's a takeaway for us today. So I'm at the point now, Kendra's out there. I'm not selling thousands of books, but my work is slowly and steadily being seen by more people than I could ever have hoped. More people than ever would have seen it if I hadn't risked myself and pushed myself to put my work out there. So that's a plus. That makes you feel good, gives you control. So think about that in your own writing. And her story, Kendra's story, is affecting people because the character is resonating with readers, especially young readers. Each new book review that I see tells me I'm on the right path with this character and with this story. And very recently, I was contacted by a group of librarians who are considering it for a special book award, a special book list for reluctant readers and at-risk youth who are in and out of the system. That makes me feel good that I put myself out here, and here it is. Oh, am I stopping? Okay, so here it is that I'm able to affect people in this way. And so I'm also creating a line of expression cards that helps kids to deal with their depression. It's called the Kendra Collection. It helps their eyes. So the takeaway from this is you don't necessarily have to disown your life experiences because it's very possible that those will contribute to your writing in a very large way. And you have to remember too, again, timing is everything. So if your work is not doing what you want it to do right now, it doesn't mean it won't. So the point is keep going, keep writing. If this is your passion, just keep working, and it'll be okay for you. Thank you. I'm Kamichi Jackson.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson, and it was very interesting. We have a couple of questions from the audience, just one.
Okay.
How does real life,
I'm sorry.
sorry, they were clapping.
Oh.
Sorry about that. Oh, what reader would you suggest? How much? Sorry, I couldn't understand the handwriting. They wanted to know how you are now dealing with your depression in your own life. Did this book really help you to like get it out, or did you seek therapy? I know it's a personal question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
But I don't mind doing it because I'm very open about it. Yeah, this has helped me a lot because I've said a lot through my characters. And as I'm meeting more and more people who are dealing with depression, they're showing appreciation for this character. That helps me. I feel in control. I feel better. I feel good that I finished something and that it's resonating with people. That can't help but uplift you. So if you've got a story like that to tell it, and don't be afraid of what people will say.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
But also, this is my co-host, Kay. Kay Walker. Yes, we changed now. We changed now to be co-host. So we're going on to our next speaker, Ms. Tara Woods Turner. And she is a best-selling author and also the host of Books and Company.